Hey everybody, this is Perch, and a couple people have pointed out, correctly by the way, I agree with you, that one of the topics that I've talked about, not regularly, but from time to time, is stupid. It's common sense, and it's like pointing out the obvious. The comic industry is not dead. It is the Western comic industry is not dead. It's a silly thing to say, bluntly, by people who would like it to be dead because they view it as part of the culture war. I get why you're frustrated. I mean, this is where, please listen to every word. I totally understand why people are frustrated. I'm frustrated with lots of things in life all the time. It doesn't mean that I'm going to fool myself into thinking those things are dead. Yes, it is actually extremely accurate to say that the comic sales, particularly if you go all the way back to the 70s and 80s when comics were in the newsstand and distributed everywhere, the comic sales are lower. They are. They are factually lower. If you say these things out loud, by the way, then a different group of people will attack you and say that you're a hate monger, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a data point. It's a fact. But because that's a fact, that doesn't correlate to the industry is dead. There's plenty of people making money, like I've done numerous videos on, along the comic industry. If we want to be really specific and say Marvel is dead or DC is dead, because that's usually what people are talking about. It's funny, Vault is a small independent comic publisher. They publish, plenty of things that have, by creators that get people really riled up on Twitter. But weirdly, you don't see a lot of videos talking about how Vault is dying or dead or terrible or anything else. They're a small indie publisher, and by and large, people ignore them. They ignore them because they're small. Vault, and by the way, there is the other argument. There are people who go like, "Oh my God, it's the greatest comic of the year. 4,000 people bought it." It's like, okay, well, maybe it's the greatest comic in your view because you enjoyed it. That's fine. Maybe you thought the story was really great, unique, original, awesome, great. But, it's not really making a big impact in terms of sales. And I understand, by the way, that some titles can make a very big impact to your heart and to your feelings and to your emotions and what you remember. And I'm not dismissing those things. Those are fine. However, comics also need money to operate, and companies, if they're not profitable, don't operate. And that is, that's why there's by and large very little attention given to some of these small indie publishers. They publish very, very, quote unquote, social justice type content, either with creators or with those with content inside the comics. But both by and large people ignore them because they're not basically making an impact either way. If you absolutely hate them, then you can rest easy at night knowing thousands and thousands of copies aren't flying out the door. And if you love them, you can rest easy at night knowing that your content is there for you if you want it. Cool. As I've shown on some of those Friday streams, if you want to see boobs, there are some companies that have got you covered. Jungle Fantasy has got you covered. They've got covers and interiors that will give you what you want. If your argument is it should be more places, cool. But by and large, no, the comic industry isn't dying, but it absolutely is changing. And this change is going to be good news for people who change with it and are able to adapt to it and, make some money and find their new role in it. One of the things that's inherent about change is it tends to shuffle the people who are in power. And we are going through a period where the people who are in power are changing. But it's not dying. And I get into arguments with people who think I'm splitting hairs when I say this, but it's a factual statement. It's as factual a statement as saying that the numbers for the traditional big two are much lower than they were in the 80s. That's also a factual statement. What's happening right now is the comic industry, the word industry being kind of the key point here, is radically evolving. Manga has more of a presence. YA and Scholastic and all that has more of a presence. And yes, our two big companies, DC and Marvel, are owned by giant megacorps who arguably want to have those comics and that IP for something other than comics. And how that plays out over time, over decades, is going to be curious to see. Right now, let's be blunt. If Disney and Warner Media, Discovery Warner, AT&T Warner, Discovery Warner, Discovery Warner, whatever it happens to be, if they believed that the marketing value, the brand recognition, the story creation, all that kind of stuff, if they believed that there was no value to it, that they could make just as much money off the movies and the cartoons. No, sorry, not just as much money, but plenty of money to the point that any kind of marketing or brand holding was not necessary. If they believed that there was no point to comics, they would stop making them. That is absolutely true. They would stop making them pretty much right away. But right now, owning some of the publishing, owning the books, owning that form of entertainment and media is important to those companies. And it's likely to be important for decades to come. That's the strategy they're playing out. Now, important to them doesn't mean, their number one priority. In fact, it absolutely is not their number one priority. But it's still a factor and a part of their business. And it's going to remain that until they believe that there's no value, no territory, no money, no importance to be gained from it. And that's going to be a while. The comics industry is dead. You can't help when you see people who go down this path. There's more hope in there than fact. It really is a nature of, you did something I don't like. I want you to be punished for it. I want you to be punished for it in an embarrassing, humiliating way, with you losing your job and your business. And again, there's a few people, by the way, who will post that and say, due to the behavior, due to what this person did, due to kind of this gatekeeping and other stuff that went on, I want them to fail. And I do appreciate those people because they're being honest about their intentions. They're being honest about how they came to this conclusion. And I think in that honesty, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for companies and creators and others to say, do I want to continue to have this attack, this battle? Is joking around with some of my peers on Twitter worth lining up this opposition? Or is there an opportunity to, change course a little bit? We've seen plenty of creators do just that. And I do think, for what it's worth, I do think that if somebody is going to try a different way of kind of conducting their business, I think people owe it to them to at least give them a chance. But you see examples of this, people just kind of opting out of this conflict. And they could be doing it for selfish reasons. They want to sell more comics. They could be doing it for practical reasons because their employer is telling them to, as some of the big two are increasingly starting to tell their creators, particularly ones that they care about working with over a long period of time. And maybe that's a hint, by the way, if your editor or your company has not called you and told you, hey, why don't you stay out of all that kind of crap? I'm not going to tell you what to do, but just, staying out of it would be better for all of us. Maybe you're not critical to that company. I'm just saying. I don't know. It's funny. A decent number of people now at this point have at least mentioned that they've had those conversations. The comic industry is changing, and the battle that people currently kind of get themselves into of us versus the West, or manga versus the West, or whatever it happens to be, this is relatively short term. What I mean by that is this battle is playing out, but playing out is probably the operative word. It's going to come to an end at some point, and we're going to be in the new world, and there will be new battles and new struggles and everything else. But the power base of comics is you can't argue, it's changing. The big players, the people who have kind of called the shots and kind of steered comics over the past, say, 20 years, are about to be replaced by and large with a new group of people. You're already seeing that. You're going to continue to see that. And, then we'll adapt to that. Will that be perfect? Absolutely not. There will be new issues. There will be new problems. But comic as a medium will continue, and it will shift, and it will evolve, and it will be different. And, we'll see what we've got. But comics is dying. No, I think it's as silly as kind of some of the dumb clickbaity stuff that goes on. It's a very fun thing to say. Oh my God, it's a disaster. But keep in mind, by the way, when some of your favorite kind of article writers or personalities or YouTubers, whatever, when they're saying comics is dying, they're kind of being not sarcastic, but they're not saying what you think they might be saying. Don't take them literally. They're saying, this is bad, or this is stupid, or this particular thing is an embarrassment. Lots of that. They're not saying that tomorrow comics are going to die, because invariably some people who listen to these shows make their way onto this channel. It's like, well, I heard from this other guy that comics is going to be extinct by the end of the year. It's like, okay, number one, probably that isn't what that person said. Number two, that's just it's a dumb thing to say. It's kind of meaningless. If you believe that Marvel Comics or DC Comics are going to shut down and be out of existence, and there will be no more comics and it'll just be over in 2021, you're crazy. Now, if you believe that, if you hope for that, that's a different story. That's again, that's your preference. It's your desire. If they've frustrated you to that point that you hope for their extinction, that's a different problem. And honestly, that's a problem that the industry has to grapple with. Hope is different than believe. If you believe it's going to happen, if you believe that by the month of December, Marvel's going to shut down, number one, you're going to be disappointed. And number two, you're getting the wrong data. Bluntly, I don't know. Is this a hard thing to say? It's weird. I really want to get to the underneath thing here. Why? What's most interesting to me is, why are we getting to this place? Why are we getting? Lots of people say lots of dumb things all the time. Why are we getting to this place where so many people have a vested interest and vested excitement in the destruction of an industry? I think that's a really interesting question. And that's something that I think more people should be asking themselves on all the different sides. How did we get here? Because it wasn't just a bunch of crazy people woke up one morning and decided to be crazy and angry. That's not how we got here. And by the way, please, if you start writing, let me explain to you how we got here. I'm asking a bit rhetorically. I have a pretty good view. I have a pretty solid idea of how we got here. This is more the question for you. If you haven't asked yourself this, you should ask yourself that. If you're in the business, you should ask yourself that. How did we get here? Anyway, enough on this. Thanks for listening.